It's funny how the start of daylight saving time really got me thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like I was changing the clock on the wall in the kitchen and I almost ripped the nail out of the wall.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then it just got me thinking, like this tiny little acts
Right.
that most people probably don't even think about anymore now that everything's digital. It just kind of got me thinking about how we do so much in our lives without really thinking about it?
That's really interesting, and especially with Lent coming up soon, too. It's like these two things that seem totally different are both kind of about intentionality in a way.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's what I thought we could dive into today. Like, how can we be more intentional, especially in a world that's so go, go, go all the time?
I think that's a great topic and something so many of us struggle with these days, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think it can be really easy to just kind of operate on autopilot, just going through the motions without really being present.
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just about these big life choices like what career paths to take or where to live. It's also the smaller everyday choices that can really make a difference.
I totally agree with that. It's like those little moments throughout the day where you can choose to be more present. Like instead of scrolling through your phone while you're having dinner with someone, you can actually like put it away and engage in the conversation.
Exactly. Or even something as simple as taking a few minutes each morning to just sit and reflect on your goals for the day. Like, what do you want to accomplish and how do you want to show up?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think a lot of people rush through their mornings and just kind of get swept up in the chaos of the day.
For sure. And that's actually something that Lent really emphasizes, this idea of taking time for reflection and self-examination. It's traditionally a time for fasting and spiritual growth.
Right. And even if someone isn't religious or doesn't observe Lent in that way,
Mm.
I think those principles can still be really valuable for anyone.
Absolutely. It's about taking a step back from the busyness of life and really asking yourself those big questions like, what's my purpose? What do I value? And how am I living in alignment with those values?
Okay, so let's get practical here. Like, how can someone apply those principles in their everyday life?
Well, let's take fasting as an example, for instance. It's not just about giving up food, right? It's about consciously choosing to abstain from something that might be hindering your growth or taking up too much of your time and energy.
So, like giving up social media for Lent.
Exactly. Or maybe it's cutting back on caffeine or spending less time watching TV. It could even be something like negative self-talk. Whatever it is, the act of giving something up forces you to be more aware of your habits and make more deliberate choices.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's like creating space for something else to come in.
Precisely. And it's not about deprivation, it's about intentionality. Like, what can you let go of that will allow you to focus on what truly matters?
That's a really powerful way to think about it. And it's interesting because I've heard some people talk about digital detox as a modern form of fasting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like taking a break from social media or limiting screen time during Lent. It's a way to kind of disconnect from the constant noise and stimulation of the digital world.
Yeah, and I think that can be really challenging for people, especially when we're so used to being connected all the time.
Absolutely. And it's not about becoming a Luddite or completely rejecting technology. It's about finding a healthy balance and being more intentional about how and when we use it.
And it's not just about giving things up, it's also about adding things in, right? Like maybe spending more time in nature or connecting with loved ones or pursuing a creative hobby.
Exactly. It's about making space for the things that bring you joy and fulfillment and help you to feel more alive.
I think this is a good time to talk about how technology has impacted our ability to be intentional, because it seems like our devices are designed to keep us constantly stimulated and distracted.
Yeah, it's like this constant stream of notifications and updates, and it can be really hard to disconnect and just be present in the moment.
And there's a lot of research out there about how this constant stimulation is affecting our brains. It's like we're training ourselves to have shorter attention spans and to be more reactive rather than proactive.
Totally. And it's not just about our attention spans either. It's also about decision fatigue. When you're bombarded with so many choices all day long, it can be really draining and make it harder to make clear and intentional decisions.
So how do we combat that? Like, what are some practical things people can do to reclaim their attention and be more intentional?
Well, mindfulness practices can be incredibly helpful. Things like meditation or even just taking a few deep breaths throughout the day can help you to pause, reconnect with yourself, and make more conscious choices.
That sounds simple enough, but I bet it's harder than it seems.
It definitely takes practice, but even a few minutes a day can make a big difference over time.
So it's not about striving for perfection. It's about making small, consistent efforts to be more mindful.
Exactly. And it's about being kind to yourself. You know, there will be times when you slip back into old habits, and that's okay. Just notice it without judgment and gently steer yourself back on course.
I love that it's like you're the driver of your own life, not just a passenger along for the ride.
Exactly. And that's a really empowering way to think about it. You have the power to choose how you want to show up in the world.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. I feel like we've covered so much ground.
Me too. It's been a really insightful dive into intentionality.
And I think the key takeaway for our listeners is that you don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Start small, be consistent, and see how those small acts of intentionality can ripple out and create positive change in all areas of your life.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. Just keep taking those small steps and be patient with yourself.
That's a perfect thought to leave our listeners with as you go about your week. Think about what one small change you can make to live with more intention. It could be anything from putting your phone away during meals to setting aside 10 minutes each morning for reflection.
It might surprise you how much of an impact those small changes can have.
Thanks for joining me today for this deep dive into intentional living.
It's been a pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, keep those questions coming, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.